Three keys to a dominant win against Michigan State. I am supremely confident, though it's more likely Oregon could lose this game than UCLA. I don't have a lot of worry about that happening, especially with the Ducks coming back at home. I don't know how much this plays into the locker room psyche, but so far, the two games at Autzen Stadium have been disappointing performances. And if I were an Oregon player, I'd say, hey, I want to put on a game that Oregon fans feel really good about, rather than having a lot of questions as they did in the first two. Now, maybe that's just me as an outside or somebody outside that locker room having that perspective, but I think that would motivate me as a player, whether I admitted it or not. But key number one to a dominant win against Michigan State, stop the run. Stop the run. If you force them into passing situations, I don't think they have the horses on the outside. Aidan Chiles has struggled completing a high percentage of his passes so far this year and has been turnover prone. I think the matchup of Michigan State's wide receivers against Oregon secondary is maybe the biggest singular gap that exists in this game. And Matt will have more on that tomorrow on the show to see if he agrees. But I have not been wowed by the Michigan State receiving core thus far. Their leading receiver is Nick Marsh. He's got 262 yards and a touchdown so far this year. He did have a 77-yarder at one point this season, but this is just not a team that wants to throw the football. Like, he had a big game, Nick Marsh did, against Maryland. Every other game, 30 yards or fewer. And again, the Boston College game had a bunch of rain and such. But I love the way this Oregon secondary has played this year. Jabbar Muhammad got off to a little bit of a slow start. Got beat a couple times and didn't have any impact plays. I think he had his best game of the year as a Duck against UCLA last week. Wouldn't be surprised if he picks up an interception this week. Wouldn't be surprised if Oregon picks up more interceptions, because that's something the secondary has done a great job of. And part of that, for sure, is that the defensive line has been doing a great job of generating pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But those two things have to work in tandem. Pressure the quarterback, secondary playing well. That's what we've seen so far this year. Whether it was Giovanni McCoy or Maddox Madsen or Ethan Garbers, everyone has struggled. The two Idaho quarterbacks that played, Jack Lane was the starter. I think a second guy got in there at the end. I could be remembering that wrong. Someone can double check me. But they've all struggled to throw the ball on this Oregon team. And I love the way the secondary is playing. So you combine that with a relative lack of talent, or at least anyone that really scares me in the Michigan State wide receiver room, with the fact that it's not how Michigan State wants to play. Like, they want to be under center. They want to run the football, and the only way they want to throw it is off play action. Well, if you take away the run, suddenly the play action isn't really there. And if they have to go shotgun passing, that's putting them in a situation that they don't want to be in, and then they're not well equipped to succeed in. So stopping the run, very, very key, because we know very, very well, if Jonathan Smith can run the football on every single play, he will do that. He'll just keep running it until you stop it. So that's key number one. You do that, you just about guarantee a victory. Key number two, create explosives. All of my keys to the game here tie back to the point of I don't have any faith in this Michigan State passing game, because they haven't shown me anything that makes me think I should believe they're capable of doing some great and wonderful things through the air. If you create explosive plays early in this game, can Michigan State keep up? Can Michigan State do just like the Oregon State game? I feel like Oregon can create big plays, whereas Michigan State is going to struggle to do so. So if you get into, and it doesn't have to be, 4 plays of 50+ yards or create a bunch, just a couple, just to kind of put that pressure on the Spartan sideline of, okay, they're going to rip off some big plays, and we have to play a perfect game. We'd have to script this out just right, like Oregon State did in the first half. That game went about as perfectly as Oregon State could have asked for. And then in the second half, Oregon made their adjustments, and the Beavers didn't score. What you'd certainly like to see as an Oregon fan is the second half of defense showing up in the first half against the Spartans, fueled by the Autzen crowd, which should be on fire for the first Big Ten home game. If you create explosive passing plays, I think that makes things easier for the offense, but I think it puts the pressure on the other sideline to really stay disciplined to their game plan. And eventually, if they get down 14-3 and Oregon's getting a bunch of chunk plays, they might ask themselves, Are we able to keep running the football? Do we have the time? Or do we have to start, adapting because we are trying to win the football game here, which plays right in again to key number 3, start hot. Start hot. Can Oregon overcome a deficit? If they go down 10-3 early in this game, could they still win by, a final score of 42-17? Yeah, absolutely. They've got the talent gap on paper to make that happen. And I like the way the offense has played over the last few weeks with the reshuffling along the offensive line. But if you start hot in this game and you don't even give Michigan State a quarter, like they didn't start hot defensively against Oregon State. But if you take the second quarter of UCLA or the third quarter of Oregon State and you put that into the first quarter here against Michigan State, then you're really cooking. And you can see the theme that all these keys tie to. Michigan State's not going to score a bunch of points in this game, and Michigan State is not capable of being as explosive the way that Oregon is. And Oregon has done a good job of limiting explosive plays so far this year, aside from Ashton Genty, who no one seems able to tackle. Now, he hasn't played, one of the 5 best defenses in the country, like a Michigan or an Ohio State or anybody like that, but the guy's really, really hard to tackle. So those are my 3 keys here against Michigan State to getting a big win. Stop the run, create explosives, and start hot. Wrapping up today's show with a prediction that came from Justin Hopkins over at On3. Works with my guy Max Torres over there at Scoop Duck. He thinks Oregon is going to land 2025 4-star quarterback and a southpaw, just like Dylan Gabriel, and current Cal commit Jaren Kiwe Sagapolutele. Now, this is curious to me. It's very curious. There are a lot of options at quarterback for the Ducks as you look ahead to 2025. If they're bringing in or thinking about bringing in, now they haven't done this yet. This is just a prediction from J-Hop, and nobody's predictions are 100% accurate. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying that if Oregon adds him, that makes me think one of 2 things. Number one, there's someone in that room that has a long-term quarterback outlook at Oregon, meaning they wouldn't start in 25 or maybe not even in 2026, that they don't believe in, or there's someone who they believe could transfer. And that person could be Austin Novosad. The transfer component could be Austin Novosad. Maybe they don't think Luke Moga is going to be able to take the necessary steps as a passer, and maybe they want to keep him around as an athlete or a wildcat quarterback and, move him to wide receiver or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. But if you're considering significantly bringing in Kiwe Sagapolutele, then they're expecting a change. Because right now your quarterback room going into 25 would be Dante Moore, Austin Novosad, Luke Moga, Achilles Smith Jr. Now Ohio State's got 5 quarterbacks on their roster right now. So maybe they'd be able to keep them all around and let them battle it out. And that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It's just not what I would think is a priority for this 2025 recruiting class. I think there are other position groups that could use more players or that they're just, short on compared to their past classes. Like on the defensive side of the ball, there are not as many commits as there have been in the past. Maybe they think their player retention is going to be really, really high. But keep an eye on that one. I know that I certainly will.